The prologue of The Conjuring 2 takes place a year before the main events of the movie and contains the key to understanding the secret to the film's ending. Our first shot introduces us to the Amityville house, and you'll notice the wallpaper of this upstairs room depicts images from the 1967 play Not Now Darling, a story set in Great Britain, which would also be where Ed and Lorraine Warren would finally have their confrontation with the inhuman spirit Valak, who is teased at in secret in the background of many scenes, so stick around to the end of this video to hear about all of them. But before our heroes would travel across the pond, they have to deal with this haunting on Long Island. This is the case set up at the end of the first movie when Ed and Lorraine get a call to go investigate the house of the Lutz family, who were haunted by the ghosts of the DeFeos, a family who was brutalized by Ronnie DeFeo Jr., who claimed to be under the influence of a demonic presence when he committed his crimes. Lorraine has an out-of-body experience where she travels through the house and sees into the past to that fatal night. She's seeing these atrocities take place through the viewpoint of Ronnie DeFeo. We can tell because Lorraine's reflection in the mirror is replaced with that of Ronnie. So Lorraine is using Ronnie's ghost as a vessel so she can gain more information about the past. And this same concept is used again in England, where the demon Valak hides behind the lingering spirit of this old man so that Lorraine is unable to detect it. At the end of her projection, she follows one of the DeFeo children into the basement. There, she discovers a couple of mannequins, which are a signature of director James Wan, as seen in Saw, Dead Silence, and Insidious Chapter 2. But more importantly, she encounters Valak, who attacks her shortly before she has a vision of a man's neck cracking. However, if we go back to that scene and turn up the lights, we can actually see that it's her husband, Ed, leading her to fear for his life just as he feared for hers in the first movie, which, by the way, comes back around here in the sequel. In the first one, Ed is wary of getting involved in anything paranormal because of an intense vision that took a huge toll on Lorraine in 1970.
A couple months ago, we were working on a case. She saw something. It took a real big piece.
And this is confirmed to be Valak in The Conjuring 2.
I had a vision in Amityville. It was the same one I had 7 years ago.
So Valak is the big antagonist that's been built up from the beginning of the franchise. To learn all of its hidden secrets, stick around to the end of this video. Welcome to Things You Missed. In today's episode, it should be obvious by now what movie I'm covering. This is at least one of my top 3 Christmas movies and probably one of the scariest movies I've seen. There was a lot of excitement in the horror community when it was announced that the second Conjuring would focus on the infamous Enfield Poltergeist, one of the most highly debated paranormal investigations of all time. If you look at the supposed paranormal activity caught on tape today, it's pretty obvious how everything was faked, but the sheer amount of people involved who claimed to believe that something supernatural was happening is enough to raise an eyebrow. The movie introduces the idea that the demon forced the young girl Janet to fake an incident to shatter her credibility with the press, which was probably inspired by the theory in real life that the girl started faking certain things once they saw how much attention the real paranormal events garnered them. And the main investigator, Maurice Gross, still believed the haunting to be genuine. There's a lot to unpack here, so let's jump back into the things you missed. With the sounds of the clash, we are transported into 1977 England, where we're introduced to the Hodgson family. The girl who is most associated with the poltergeist is 11-year-old Janet, and she gets caught smoking a cigarette at school, but she was actually just holding it for her friend. However, none of the adults believe her. They are shown to be hypocrites, scolding her for her behavior while engaging in the same behavior themselves. This is the perfect character introduction for Janet because nobody believes she's telling the truth due to her age, which is exactly what happens when she becomes involved in the hauntings, making the situation seem that much more hopeless for her. There's actually a deleted scene where Ed, Lorraine, and Maurice discuss the possibility of Janet being possessed with Mrs. Hodgson, and Ed brings up an interesting point about Janet's age.
What about Janet? I want to know, is she possessed?
Well, it's too soon to say. The onset of puberty, the fracturing of the family, these are things that can definitely attract a negative entity.
This is actually a real phenomenon. The majority of poltergeist claims do involve pubescent-aged kids. Ed's explanation is that the spirits are drawn to the negative emotions associated with hitting puberty, which in Janet's case are heightened by the fact that her parents recently went through a divorce. But the opposite argument can be made. Rationalists will say that because of their puberty experience, these kids are lashing out and creating these so-called paranormal spectacles as an attention-seeking method. So this dichotomy is part of the central conflict in the movie. After returning home from school, Janet and her older sister Margaret test out the spirit board that Janet and her friend made, which is perhaps what opened up their family to the haunting. But I'm sure if you order this tea using the link in the description, you'll probably be fine. Specifically, they ask if their father is ever coming back, and this might have attracted the inhuman spirit because it sensed it could feed off this negative energy. Sure enough, that night, scary stuff starts to happen. Janet wakes up on the floor in front of the supposedly haunted chair in the living room, and Margaret is woken up by 3 loud knocks on their bedroom door. There are a few instances in the movie where the poltergeist tries to scare them by knocking in threes, like a couple of nights later when Janet is pulled out of bed, and when the police came to investigate and experience the paranormal activity for themselves. The reason that the knocks always come in threes goes back to a minor detail from the first Conjuring.
Oh, that's to keep those doors from banging at night. Otherwise, it's like all night long, just like that.
Does it come in threes?
Yeah?
Well, sometimes it's meant as an insult to the Trinity. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
The night after Janet wakes up downstairs, even more weird stuff starts to occur, like a swing in the backyard moving on its own and Janet talking in her sleep. Margaret notices this and witnesses her sister turn towards the dark corner of the room, apparently possessed by the spirit of the home's previous owner, Bill Wilkins. It's almost like she's having a conversation with someone in this corner, but when Margaret goes to investigate, there's no one there, despite the fact that all of the posters on the walls make it feel like many pairs of eyes are watching them. But this is the exact spot where Valak would spawn at the end of the movie, and during that final scene, we get our only short glimpse at the demon's true form, whose origins will be explored later in this video. The Hodgson family's initial diagnosis of their situation is that they're being haunted by the ghost of Bill Wilkins, the old man who allegedly died in his chair before the Hodgsons moved in. When Billy Hodgson wanders downstairs for a glass of water during the night, you can spot the ghost of Bill Wilkins sitting in the chair as he passes by the living room. Back in Connecticut, the Warrens start having visions about Valak. In my episode on the first Conjuring movie, I mentioned that the paintings seen around the house are a nod to the real-life Ed Warren, who created sketches of people's homes as a gift in order to start a conversation about any supernatural happenings the owners might have experienced. It seems that he also just enjoys painting as a hobby because in his office later in the movie, there's a picture of the Perrin family home from The Conjuring. But this time, Ed paints a creepy nun from his dream, perhaps a sign that he too has a little bit of clairvoyance ability, maybe just nowhere near as strong as LORRAINE. LORRAINE recognizes the nun from her previous visions but does not know its name. In the Conjurverse, knowing a demon's name gives an exorcist dominion over it. However, if you're paying attention to the background details of many scenes, you'll see creepy signs of the demon's name, Valak, hidden around the house in secret. In the kitchen, this love ornament has a capital V and the letters A-L-A-K are hidden on this panel. By the window, there's some artwork by their daughter Judy, which also spells out the name Valak. Then in the Warren study, there were a series of letters arranged on the bookshelf. If you read them from left to right, you'll see V-A-L-A-K. There's also a small nun ornament on that shelf. During the scene, Judy is making bracelets, and if you zoom in on one of them, it says Valak on it. This is a couple of times where the name has appeared in Judy's art, and I think it's a subtle sign that she too has the abilities of a medium like LORRAINE, which is backed up in the next scene where she's able to see Valak in the hallway. Though, I guess it's debatable if this is just part of LORRAINE's dream, but it does seem like they've been setting up the idea of Judy possibly being a medium and getting her own movie in the future. A couple notes on this scene, by the way. This has got to be an homage to the twin scene in The Shining, which also has a kid having a vision of a scary entity at the end of a long hallway with flower wallpaper. I just love how the Warrens have this wallpaper going all the way down, but they also felt the need to put up these framed photos of the same flowers. But while LORRAINE is in the study, she's studying her Bible, and she has it open to a page with the headline, The Song of Solomon. This is an interesting detail because there are two demons we've met up to this point in the Conjuring franchise. Malthus, the main antagonist of the Annabelle spin-offs, and Valak from this movie. Both of these demons come from the 17th century spellbook said to contain rituals for summoning demons called the Lesser Key of Solomon. They're based off of Halfus and Valak, respectively, who are both supposedly presidents of hell. The mythological version of Valak is never associated with a nun form. That was an invention of the film's director, James Wan. The initial vision for Valak was actually more in line with the traditional appearance of a demon, but this look was mostly scrapped in favor of having Valak appear as a creepy nun, which fits nicely with the idea that the evil entity is attacking LORRAINE's faith. The same reason for the 3 knocks that I mentioned earlier. However, we do still see a remnant of the initial design for Valak at the end after LORRAINE has condemned the creature back to hell. It convulses and briefly reverts back to its true form before being sucked back into the underworld. I'll turn up the lights again so you can get a better look at the villain's actual appearance. I also want to note that in the real-life Enfield Poltergeist case, the family did allegedly suspect the old man Bill Wilkins of being the spirit that was haunting them, but there was never anything about him being controlled by Valak. That's strictly in the movie. When LORRAINE has the vision about Valak in the study, she envisions Valak attacking her in Ed's office, and she's startled by the stereo suddenly turning on and playing the Christmas song Hark the Herald Angels Sing, which is a British song, perhaps a clue that her encounter with Valak would be in England around Christmas time. We do hear that song during the finale when Ed tries to save Janet. The vision continues with Valak manifesting behind Ed's painting and attacking her, during which she falls and knocks over this holy statue thing, another symbol of the demon trying to attack her faith. When she gets up, she finds herself back in the basement in Amityville.
I'm Spider-Man.
And when she awakes from the vision, she subconsciously scribbles something onto the pages of her Bible. If you're paying close attention, you see her write the letters V-A-L before it cuts away. But because she's still in her vision, she doesn't realize that she's discovered the demon's name. There's also a crossword puzzle next to her when she comes to, a possible sign that she needs this missing word, Valak, in order to have dominion over the evil spirits. Finally, when Ed and Lorraine do finally get to England, they meet with Maurice and a couple others who are involved in the investigation at the Warrington pub, and the drink coasters have text reading Valak bitter. There are signs other than just those about Valak. For example, the toy train in Billy's room could foreshadow the train ride where Ed finally realizes that Bill Wilkins' spirit is being controlled, and the Humpty Dumpty toy on Janet and Margaret's dresser is one of the few toys to remain in the room after everything is cleared out in an attempt to sanitize the evil presence. As you may know, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, and Ed Warren nearly shares the same fate at the end of the movie. Whoa, Janet, wait till you get older before you get into that stuff. Before long, a news program gave a report on the Green Street house, and the story started to blow up in the media. One of the interviewees on this program is named Hazel Short. She's based off of a real-life person. Hazel Short was a lollipop lady, which is apparently British for crossing guard.
I saw Janet laying flat, and she was floating. She was going up and down in front of the bedroom window.
Graham Morris was also a real photographer from the Daily Mirror.
I used to work for the Daily Mirror as a general news photographer. I think the crunch came when the person on the phone, the other end, said, oh, well, we've all seen this, including the police.
We're related. Not really. I mean, I don't actually know, but I know deep down that we are. The constables who took down the report really did give a documentary interview.
It came off the floor, or maybe a ½ inch, I should say, and I saw it slide off to the right, about 3.5 to 4 feet.
And the interview scene, of course, was based on the actual interviews given by the girls in 1977. One detail I found interesting was how in the movie, Margaret essentially says the opposite of what she says in real life.
How does it feel living in a haunted house?
I don't know. You don't get used to it. See, we was just a normal family before this.
How does it feel to be haunted by a poltergeist?
It's not haunted. Shut up.
Does it frighten you, the things that happen here?
Oh, well, it did first, but now I've got more used to it. And you learn to accept the things that happen.
I find it ironic how the movie will take such great lengths to get the little details right when recreating these videos, but then completely exaggerate how much the Warrens were actually involved in the story. Apparently, they were only actually there for a day or two of the 2-year investigation. There would be more well-documented reports in the media that we can compare to their real-life counterparts and discover even more things you missed. Ed and Lorraine first learn of the Enfield Poltergeist when their priest plays them the audio recording of Bill Wilkins supposedly taking over Janet Hodgson's voice.
Knock, knock. Very well. Who's there? Bill, 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 Bill.
Word was getting around quickly about the terror on Green Street, and the Daily Mirror headline seen in the movie is a recreation of an actual newspaper front page from September 10th, 1977. But it seems James Wan wanted the bit about Shore's son taken out. Not sure what that's about. When the Warrens arrive in the UK, they conduct a test to see if Janet is really the one making the demonic voices, or if she's actually being possessed. In the true story, this is one of the most debated aspects of the conversation. There was some disagreement about whether it would be possible for Janet's larynx to produce that sound, and whether she would be able to keep it up for long periods of time.
Do you think there's anyone there just now?
Yeah, I do.
Who's that?
What?
Am I talking to the spirit that's oppressing this family?
Is that what I am?
That night, there's another clue that Bill Wilkins is merely a pawn being controlled by Valak. Janet is transported from downstairs into her locked room in the middle of the night, and she sees all of the crosses on the walls invert in a circle around her. This follows the same motion that we saw earlier when the nun's shadow circled around Lorraine during her vision. Unfortunately, this technique gets kinda overused in the later spin-offs, The Nun and Annabelle Comes Home. The one character I haven't mentioned yet is the Crooked Man, who is the physical manifestation of the character from Billy's nursery rhyme Zoetrope toy. It isn't exactly spelled out if this is Valak or another character entirely. I'm guessing it's a separate separate entity that's being manipulated by Valak in a similar way to how Bill was being manipulated, because you can actually see the Crooked Man lurking in the background here as Ed tries to go save Janet from Valak's clutches. There's been some talk about a possible Crooked Man spin-off movie, but it's hard to say if that's still coming in the wake of a global pandemic. At the beginning of this video, I talked about how alleged poltergeists are often heavily associated with the negative energy of kids hitting their pubescent years, and oftentimes are the result of a troubled home life. And it seems that The Conjuring 2 acknowledges that tendency, because the Warrens are only able to confront Valak and finally send it away after helping the Hodgsons return to a sense of normalcy in their family.
In the meantime, Ed and I can be spending time with Peggy and the kids, because they need to be a family again.
One of the reasons that they're struggling is the divorce, which was potentially what caused the dark spirit to come in their lives in the first place.
Is Dad ever coming home?
So it's probably no coincidence that Ed and Lorraine are what drive their demon away. It's both literal and figurative. Peggy tells Ed that when her husband left, he took the music with him.
Literally, he took all the records. My kids used to love listening to his Elvis collection.
So by Ed buying them new Elvis albums and performing his music for the kids, he's kind of filling the fatherly role. He's helping the family patch up the void left by the missing father and presumably weakening the hold that Valak has on the family.
Thank you.
He also helps soften the damage of the lack of a father figure by helping Peggy out in the laundry room when their building is flooded. Ah yes, Ed Warren, plumber, mechanic, musician, painter, husband, father, priest, and oh yeah, paranormal investigator. But this time it would be Lorraine that saved Ed by sending Valak back to the depths of hell and pulling him to safety just before he fell to his death. The Warrens placed the Crooked Man zoetrope in their room of cursed objects right next to the music box from the first movie, and the Warrens celebrate Christmas with a little bit of the king. Happy ending, roll the credits, because there are a few more subliminal things you missed hidden inside of them. The first is this image, which only flashes on screen for one frame, or 1/24th of a second, where we see Valak in its nun form standing over old man Bill in his chair. You can see the oxygen tanks here, as if Bill is down to his final moments and Valak is just waiting to feast on his soul. I'm not sure what it is, but there's definitely something creepy about the nun's face being blurred. The next subliminal image is on screen for just 2 frames. Again, Valak's face is blurred. This is the hallway scene that I discussed earlier. Shortly after that, there is this very unsettling image of the Annabelle doll sitting in the dark. This was probably here to tease Annabelle Creation, which came out the year after The Conjuring 2. The final image to flash on screen is this one, of Bill Wilkins possessed by the glowing eyes of Valak, leaving the film on a very chilling note despite the happy ending, and setting up for the spin-off that would come out in 2018, The Nun. So with that, I've now released a Things You Missed episode on every Conjuring universe film to date. So click that playlist on the left to make sure you're up to date on everything you missed in The Conjuring, Annabelle, The Nun, and La Llorona. Of course, you know I'll be covering The Conjuring 3 as soon as it's available, so make sure you subscribe to CZsWorld for new horrors every week, ring the death bell for notifications, and I'll see you in the next one. Assuming we both survive.